The hidden empire that owns every nation's debt. What if I told you that every nation on Earth, from the mightiest superpower to the smallest island state, is trapped in the same invisible web? A web spun not by armies or kings, but by a hidden empire that doesn't rule with guns or borders, but with debt. Every country owes money. Yet no one ever asks the obvious question to whom? If every government is in debt, then who exactly is the creditor? Who owns the money we all owe? Today, we're pulling back the curtain on a system older than most wars, stronger than any constitution, and more invisible than any empire in history. Because the real empire doesn't need land. It just needs you to believe the debt can never be paid off. Let's go back thousands of years. Before money, before banks, before credit cards, there was trust. In ancient Mesopotamia, farmers recorded debts on clay tablets, promises of future grain or cattle. These tablets weren't just bookkeeping. They were the foundation of civilization. Debt created social order. It told who owed what tan to whom. But over centuries, something changed. Debt stopped being a relationship between people and became a weapon of control. By the time gold coins appeared, rulers realized a secret. Control the money, and you control the people. But the real game began in the 17th century with the birth of central banking. In 1694, England was broke. Wars had drained the treasury. Then came an offer from a group of wealthy merchants. We'll lend you the money if you let us print it. That deal created the Bank of England, the world's first central bank. Private investors lent money to the government, and in return, they got the right to issue currency backed by that debt. From that moment on, debt wasn't a problem, it became a product. Other nations followed fast. France, the Netherlands, eventually, the United States all built central banks designed not to eliminate debt, but to manage it. Because here's the hidden genius. Debt isn't meant to be paid off. It's meant to generate interest for it. The 19th century saw empires rise not by colonizing land but by colonizing balance sheets. Rothschild bankers financed wars, revolutions, and entire governments, often both sides. Nations that won paid with pride. Nations that lost paid with their future.
When gold-backed money was replaced by paper promises, power quietly shifted.
Governments printed debt, central banks bought it, and the public paid through inflation. It was an elegant illusion. The people thought they had money, but what they really had was debt disguised as wealth. By the early 20th century, this hidden empire had a new capital, New York. The Federal Reserve, born in 1913, mirrored the Bank of England's Medela private consortium managing public debt. Just months later, World War I erupted.
And suddenly, debt was the fuel that ran the planet. Nations borrowed. Banks profited.
For centuries, gold had been the one limit. But in 1971, that changed forever. President Richard Nixon ended the gold standard, detaching the US dollar from any physical value. Money became fiat-backed by nothing but government decree. That single move didn't just change America, it rewired the global economy. Because the US dollar, now unbacked, still remained the world's reserve currency. Every other nation had to hold dollars to trade. In effect, the US could print limitless money while the rest of the world borrowed it. Now, central banks didn't just manage national economies, they managed global debt chains. Every loan, every bailout, every interest rate decision tied nations tighter together under one silent truth. No country is truly independent. By the 1990s, developing countries were drowning in debt. The IMF and World Bank offered rescue packages, but with strings attached. Those strings pulled entire economies into permanent dependency. Governments were forced to privatize, cut public spending, and open markets to foreign control. Meanwhile, the same banks that caused financial crises got bailed out using taxpayer money. In 2008, when the global economy nearly collapsed, governments borrowed trillions to save the system. But that rescue didn't fix the problem, it multiplied it. By 2025, the world's total debt surpassed $320 trillion nearly, 3 times global GDP. And here's the paradox. The more debt we create, the richer the lenders become. And the poorer the nations get. Every time the system shakes, the same cure is prescribed. Print more money, central banks slash rates, buy bonds, and flood the world with liquidity. But like a patient addicted to painkillers, each dose needs to be bigger than the last. Quantitative easing, zero interest rates, negative rates, all different names for one idea. Debt must keep expanding, or the system dies. Because here's the uncomfortable truth: our entire financial world runs on borrowed time and borrowed money. If debt stops growing, everything crashes. And the empire that owns every nation's debt today, the same playbook repeats, just with digital upgrades. But they also promise control programmable money that can expire, restrict purchases, or track every transaction. And the more we digitize, the easier it becomes for the system to tighten its grip. Think about it. When you get a loan, you owe the bank. When your government borrows, you owe the system. Every tax dollar, every interest payment, every inflation spike feeds the same invisible machine. And that machine doesn't care who's president, who's prime minister, or what party is in power. Because politicians come and go. But debt is forever. So what can we learn from this? Money isn't real. Wealth, it's a claim on your future labor. The system profits when you stay in debt, not when you're free from it. The empire doesn't need soldiers, just needs trust. Every time we believe money has value, we strengthen the illusion. The cycle can only continue as long as people don't question it. Awareness is the first rebellion. The hidden empire isn't a single group in a dark room. It's a system built on silence, repetition, and obedience. Every nation plays the same game. Every citizen funds it, and every generation inherits a little more of its weight. But empires built on illusion don't last forever. They crumble the moment enough people see through the magic trick. So ask yourself, who really owns whom? If you want to understand how deep this system goes beyond politics, beyond borders, beyond everything we've been taught about money, subscribe and stay curious.